Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about Thunder Lotus Studios Jotun, a visually striking action game that will see you battling massive giants as a tiny Viking. But does Jotun bring the thunder, or will it rest in the shadows of other colossal games? So, narrative-wise, Jotun tells the story of Thor, a pretty badass Viking who, dies of drowning in the first 3 minutes of the game or so. Now, that's not nearly as awesome enough or honorable enough a death to qualify for Valhalla, so this would normally condemn them to, hell, I think. Anyways, that said, that's not where Thor ends up. Instead, she winds up in the Viking version of what I basically felt was like purgatory? Ginnungagap, I think. I probably slaughtered that word, but anyways. Thora, she has a shot at redemption. If she can slay 5 Jotun. Those be giants, yo. Basically, it's a pretty excellent adventure, and you do get to find out more about Thora and what led to their horrible fishing accident as you continue to progress through the game, as they monologue about what led to their demise after each boss is felled. Honestly, it was pretty soothing for me to listen to her exposition, since it made sure that I sort of wound down for a second to read what she says after the boss fights. And I do mean read, since while she is talking, unless you can understand Icelandic, you'll be relying on the subtitles to find out what Thor is saying. Honestly, it has a pretty neat, authentic touch to it. So gameplay-wise, Jotun ends up having a neat assortment of things to offer. It kickstarts players in the realm of the Wood Jotun, where they'll learn the basics of swing axe harder with a long-ass attack animation, and dodge. Well, you won't be doing too much attacking there, given it has more of a focus on exploring a poison-filled forest, but it's a distinctly pleasant experience to navigate the woods. It also more or less introduces you to everything you need to find in the later realms. You'll no doubt stumble upon a well containing Mimmer's decapitated head, which you can activate to replenish your health and regain all charges of the spells you've acquired. It also has a checkpoint in case you die, and lastly, it'll squick you out, since he'll proceed to follow you with his unblinking gaze as you move around the room. Just know. The other key item is the Jotun Room, a stone that serves as a sort of key to accessing the boss's chamber. Now, these objects serve as the primary objectives to your adventures in the Jotun realms, and more importantly, for all the Jotun other than the Wood Jotun, you'll in fact need 2 to access their boss fights. Which means, yes, exploring 2 realms for the rest of them. That said, that's a pretty fun endeavor, given that each realm plays out fairly differently. Now, that's not because your controls differ at all, but more because they're very different in their respective flavors, being more puzzle-oriented in some, or just obstacle navigating. One can even become a nightmarish chase scene if you aren't too careful. All of these realms, however, reward exploration. You might have noticed I mentioned magical power earlier, and the reason for that is because in each of the Jotun's realms are a shrine dedicated to a Norse god, which bequeaths onto you a related power, like lightning hammer slam spam, courtesy of Thor, or clones of yourself that force enemies to target it and then explode from our boy Loki. They're pretty powerful and help with the game at large. The other key reward you can get from exploration, other than neat optional areas that Thor will comment on, is Ithin's Golden Apples, which are once per realm hidden collectibles that permanently boost your health, to a very noticeable degree. In any case, this was a lot said about the exploration half of the game, but there's still the fights with the Jotun, and they do not disappoint. Whilst exploration will highlight just how large this mythological world is, the boss fights hammer that point in, putting you face to face with behemoth enemies which dwarf you many times over, which is doubly noticeable since there's dwarfs in this game that you dwarf. Whilst it's not quite as puzzle-oriented combat like Shadows of the Colossus, there's definitely a tactical side to the battles, and you can certainly weaponize elements of a good number of the arenas and the Jotuns against themselves. Which feels pretty necessary at times, given they are more than well equipped to turn you into a smear of paste. That said, the exploration half of the game does tend to introduce you to a number of the boss mechanics before the fight, including those posed by the arenas themselves, so an observant player is at least apt to spare themselves some agony. Though trying to get the large amount of challenge achievements tied to each encounter might be a bit trying. No hit runs, cough, no power runs. Also timed runs, my god. That said, for those who weren't adequately challenged, who conquered the Jotun and decided they needed more, the game provides Valhalla mode, which takes your character from the normal mode with all their upgrades intact, and pits them against even more vicious forms of the bosses. It's a grueling endeavor, but for those who crave challenge, it might itch that scratch. And it is strictly a boss mode, as it skips the worlds leading up to each one. Now, as I said earlier, there was already an aspect that I really enjoyed, and that was Thor's voice. That wasn't the only thing that caught my attention, however, as the music in this game is enjoyable, and really complements the whole on an epic quest, encountering massive foes vibe the game's got going for it. Alright, so graphically, Jotun is an absolute treat to behold. With its splendid depictions in the mythical realms, you're exploring a joy to discover. The boss fights are also fluidly animated marvels to behold, but if I had to make one major nitpick with the game, it would be that in demonstrating just how large these creatures are and the scale of everything you need to take heed of, it can actually mess with, at least my sense of perspective. While it's impressive for the screen to pull back and show off the grandeur of the world and the immensity of the Jotun boss fights, the fact that I became super tiny could sometimes be a bit of a visibility issue, at least in some of the boss fights. All the same, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Jotun, wandering the various realms it provided, and diving into the combination of Thor's backstory and the lore of the world at large. I do wish there was more to do in the game, as I was able to tear through it in a relatively short amount of time, but for what time I did spend, I was incredibly happy to have made that journey. Altogether, I'd say this game is a solid hit, and I'd recommend it to people who enjoy boss battlers or adventure games. And that brings this to a close, so I'd like to thank you folks for both tuning in and sticking out till the end of this review. Whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I'd love to hear from you folks in the comments, and for those interested in more indie reviews, the interviews with the developers, and other odds and ends, feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you're notified when we have a new release. Lastly, join our Discord, link in the description of the banner, so you can become a part of our community. I'd like to think it's pretty cozy there. Anywho, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.